Here
Hello.
we are. Hi.
Hi.
Why did we
Mhm.
do this?
I don't know. We like
Anyway,
to talk, and it's gotten us into trouble. So,
that's true. I do love to talk
um,
and will do so incessantly. So now we've decided to infect everyone else with it.
and start a podcast like everyone else is doing.
Every time I tell someone that I know, I'm like, oh, like we're starting a podcast. I like throw up a little bit in my mouth because saying the words we're
Yeah,
starting a podcast just sounds disgusting.
I
It would be
know.
worse if we were men.
Oh, for sure. And I simply think that we are cool, so we can
Well,
do
that's
it.
true. However, I do think it was irresponsible for anyone to allow us to have microphones.
Yes, but Target's cool, and I was able to purchase one.
That's
And your
true.
sister had one, so
That's true.
really,
I
Target
stole
and
it
your
from her.
sister are to blame.
Oh, send your therapy bills to them.
Mm-hmm. Just Target.
Um.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. I don't know how to podcast, Hannah.
I do not either. I feel like I would fail as a YouTuber because how do you do
Oh, I
that?
could never.
You know?
Long
That's a
form video
yep.
content by yourself? Absolutely not. TikTok's
Mhm.
bad enough. And
That's
that's
why I
only.
simply I can do like Instagram stories, but TikTok is just a whole nother beast that I feel.
It's the Wild West out here.
Mhm.
It
It
really
really
is.
is.
So I guess we should say who we are and
Yeah,
what we're
that'd be
doing.
useful.
I'm this is gonna be chaos. I am Caroline, known more widely, probably on the internet, as
Very
at Salty
widely.
Caroline. Very widely seems like a lot. Salty Caroline reads. Um, who am I as a person? I read a lot of books. That's it. That's my only
Mhm.
personality trait.
Mhm.
Um, I most of what I do for fun is quite literally reading books and talking about them on TikTok and also sometimes Instagram and even more rarely Twitter.
Oh, Twitter.
And then I also intern for a romance publisher. I work in publicity and marketing
Which is
for a lovely
amazing.
little publisher called Forever, who
A
I love
lovely
very
little
much.
publisher.
Lovely little publisher. Shout out to Estelle and Dana and Nicole and Carolina. I hope
Aw.
that none of them are listening to this, but if you are,
Good
I'm
luck,
doing a little
Charlie.
hand symbol for a heart. Good luck, Charlie. Anyway, so I feel like, I mean, that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. My name is Hannah. I am formally known
Formally.
as not former, but like formel, formally known
Oh.
as Fringe Book Reviews because I have bangs. Not currently; they're very wispy right now because they're too long. But and I started because I was just very weird. So we're on the fringe. And that's why I was like, it's a double meaning. But mainly, if I would have known, I didn't know I was going to be a romance person when I first started. I thought I was just going to like talk about all things books, and so I didn't do anything with bangs. But like banging, it like there are a lot
Oh.
more like things I could have done with
You could
bangs.
start like a little series or
Yeah,
something.
like my bio on Instagram is like there are many types of bangs here, so that's as far as I went
Okay.
with that.
You can do something with that.
I know. I feel like there are
We'll
many
do something.
directions.
We'll
Yeah.
take advantage of that. So
Yeah.
that's who we are. Or unless you
Yeah.
have more.
Well, what else is there about
Who you
me?
are as a person
Me as a person
outside of books.
outside of books. Well, there is no person outside of books because I
Relatable.
like Caroline. All I do is read. I always have an
Sure.
audiobook and probably an ebook and maybe a physical book, even though those are winding down because I don't have time. But I like buying them, so that's the thing I like to do. I work for a romance fiction app, but it's like very into erotica. So I read a lot of sex scenes every day for work and then for Bookstagram because I'm a Bookstagrammer. I have a TikTok and a Twitter, but like they don't get TikTok barely gets used. I need to start using it more. But again, videos, that seems like I need to be put together, and I quite always have my bangs scrunched on top of my head. So there's that. But yeah, I read a lot of romance and listen to a lot and love it. And was like,
We read a lot of romance. We work with a lot of romance.
I know. And I feel like those are two very specific things. Like, how do we Like, how are we both working with romance? Like, that's very odd.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I don't know how long this is an internship, so
True.
would I love to continue in this job / with this company? Yes. Will I? It's up in the air. Who's to say? Anyway, so that's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
What is this?
This is a podcast. I bet you would know that. Because why would you? But yeah, this is going to be a romance podcast where we tell you things that we've read and hopefully you want to read them.
Things that you should read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So welcome to Romance Your TBR.
Yeah. We thought that was very clever.
We also stole it from ourselves.
We did.
It was our Bookstagram challenge, and then we were like, wait.
Yeah, maybe you participated in that challenge. And you're like, hey, that looks familiar. Basically, August
That's because we're lazy. We can only come up with so many romance-related titles.
Yeah, we were going to announce the podcast like mid-August for that. That did not happen.
That's not how timelines work.
No.
Anyway, Romance Your TBR is a historical, mainly, romance podcast in which we're going to talk about books and tropes and authors that we really like.
We're going to update you on everything that we're reading because we read a lot.
Specifically, the bonkers books.
Yes.
Because, well, I mean, historical romance is largely inherently bonkers. However, we, for some reason, tend to just really find absolutely bonkers ones.
And we make it our personality.
Bananas. And I'm dropping things. It is our personality.
It is. Like, do I try to get my friends to read these books? Yes.
Absolutely, I do.
And I've succeeded.
Wild.
I have succeeded.
They are wild. I feel the need to clarify, when I call a book bonkers, that's like a very high compliment.
Yes.
Like, I'm never going to call a book that I don't like bonkers. I'm not going to be like, this is a wild historical if I'm like not enjoying it.
I was reading a book this morning and it's this tangential. She was dating or like hooking up with a guy who she just was like not attracted to, but it was like, I don't want to date, so I'm going to hook up with someone I am physically repulsed by. And she was just like, he was truly jarring to date. So I think and I
as a person could be described as jarring.
I thought that was the most brutal
that's devastating
to approach something. So I suppose if I truly hate a book, I'm going to call it jarring because I just thought she destroyed his entire life by saying he was just jarring.
That is devastating
to date.
Tag yourself. I'm jarring.
Yeah. So bonkers, good. Jarring, insulting.
I feel like I use a lot of I'll be like, this book is bananas. That's always a good sign. Wild, absurd is a personal favorite.
Kooky. I love a good kooky.
Oh, kooky. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
I need to use that. I think bonkers is the one that I use the most because it's a silly word and it just feels right.
I think bananas is probably mine because I have an inherent connection to the banana as named Hannah. So, my first Halloween, I was a banana. Pretty cute. So I say bananas a lot. Also, I really loved the Hollaback Girl song growing up.
All right.
So I love spelling bananas to a beat. So, no, there's that. There's me. This is real. This is me.
There are just a lot of banana-related jokes swirling around in my brain.
Well, it's also phallic, so...
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Moving forward. Do we want, structure, podcast information, what we're going to be doing, besides just talking about books that we love? Which, by the way, is quite literally the whole premise of this podcast. Yes. It wasn't like, ooh, we can... Very intellectual.
No.
Let's really unpack. No. This is us being here's the most unhinged... That's another one of my favorites. Unhinged.
Yes.
Books that we have read. Again, 99% historical because that's what we read, although I will not promise to not bring any paranormal and the occasional.
And I do occasionally read some very good contemporary. If I'm going to talk about contemporary that I love, that means it's a very good book because contemporary romances make me mad all of the time. And that's why I feel bad reading them because there is a disadvantage to them because it's me reading it. But if I don't read them, I won't find the ones that I like. So it's very hard.
I try to mix because historical is so straight and white.
Yes.
That if you don't mix in some contemporary, you're going to end up reading straight white authors over and over and over again. And I do try to avoid that.
Yeah.
However, I am really, really picky about contemporary, and I think that they're just harder to write, honestly.
Yeah,
harder to write good ones.
I don't like contemporary men. That's my issue. I don't like their POVs. I have zero issue with it, like a hero POV in historical. I crave it. I need it. If it doesn't have it, I find it's odd. But in contemporary romance, I truly despise the male mind. I don't know what it is, or like what we perceive as the male mind.
Sure.
Like it physically makes me angry, and so it's very hard because so many of them are dual POV, and there's just like no mystery. But like I love it in historical, so it's a weird hurdle I have to get over. But
That's fair.
I don't know.
There's a lot of little things that make up my preference for historical over contemporary. But anyway, so yes, most of the books, 99%, are going to be historicals. It's a largely historical romance podcast. This was brought to fruition by our friend Kylie.
Hello, Kylie.
Who quite literally I was DMing one day about absolutely bonkers books and the ways that people talk about romance. And she was like, I would listen to a podcast of you and Hannah just talking about the wildest books that you've read. And then I immediately went to my DM with you and was like, hear me out.
And I was like, yes. Like, no convincing.
And then I think you bought a mic that day.
I had a Target gift card and the mic was on sale. And so the fates really aligned. And I bought we researched mics, and then you were like, this one, the Blue Yeti.
And then it turns out, again, I stole it from my sister because she already had it. And I was like, bet that is mine now.
Literally, we bought mics I bought a mic that night, I believe. And then Caroline already had one, found it, and here we are, like 2 months later.
Here we are with our podcast much later, which, if you haven't noticed, is going to be chaotic. Neither of us know how to do a podcast. Podcast. Neither of us know what we're doing.
No.
And frankly, I think that I'm just going to lean into that energy. We have a loose structure planned.
Loose morals and loose structure. So,
all right, speak for yourself. A screw loose, perhaps.
Yes, multiple.
Anyways, we've got a few different episode structures where we'll alternate between talking about a specific book in an episode, a specific trope that we like, and a specific author. And then every other Tuesday, we will be doing short TBR Tuesdays where we talk about some of the books we have been reading recently that we think you should add to your TBRs.
Leaning into alliteration and our title, so, you know.
Well, what's better than alliteration?
I know.
It's my favorite of literary devices.
It is who we are. I do like palindromes, but, you know, that's...
You're partial to those.
I am very partial. But yeah, that's enough about that. So should we like say what we're gonna talk about the next few weeks?
The next few episodes? We've only planned the next few. I want to say we reserve the right to be like, this doesn't work at all.
Oh, yes.
And then completely revise our structure and approach.
Everything.
Because nothing matters, and there's going to be like 4 people listening to this podcast, so we're going to do whatever we want.
Exactly.
Yes, we've got the next few planned. Do you want to...
Yeah. So we are going to start with Heartbreaker by Sarah MacLean. Not in this episode, because this is just an intro, but the next one.
Our first full episode.
That book was so
good. We wanted to start with a book that we love, that is also slightly bonkers.
Yes. Bonkers, Ted Lasso energy. Like, there's just a whole lot going on there.
Dare I say, a perfect hero. I love the heroine, too.
Like,
you dare me?
I dare you.
Challenge accepted. The Duke of Claiborne is the perfect romance hero. You may quote me on that.
Because truly, like 9 times out of 10, I have recently been disproven, but like 9 times out of 10, a buttoned up, starchy Duke will do it for me every time. Like, always
it has
so good.
To equally, like, the more buttoned up he is, the more
crazy in the sheets.
He has to be filthy,
yes,
in order to balance that out. But the like stronger that dichotomy, the better that character. It unlocks my brain in a really delicious way.
Claiborne just really went all in from the start.
He
so
did.
That's what I need. Like I don't. Okay. We're not going to talk about that.
We should save it. Save it for the episode.
Yeah,
it's just going to be 45 minutes of us talking about the Duke of Claiborne.
Yes. And I am so ready.
Yes. And then our first trope episode will be about historical road trip romances, which ironically Heartbreaker also fits into, but we probably won't talk about that one.
Or we will, you know.
Or we will. It's just going to come up in every episode.
You know, it fits. It fits a lot. And then our author is going to be India Holton.
Who we both love.
That book.
The Wisteria Society. They're so good. I'm so excited for the next one. So that'll be our first author episode.
This next one. And then our next, so that's like every week, one of those. So like Heartbreaker, 1 week. Road Trip, 1 week. India Holton, 1 week. And then the week after that, The Earl Takes All by Lorraine Heath.
Indeed. And then our next
book
trope.
That needs...
The Gorilla Twin Swap book deserves its own.
Like, that book is so much
good.
Amazing.
Yes. And then we'll do a trope episode on fake engagements / courtships.
And then the next author is Evie Dunmore of what is it? It's Bringing Down the Duke, but what's the series name?
A League of Extraordinary Women.
And
also notably, I think the author that brought both of us.
Yes, for sure.
Historical romance, which leads me to the final portion of this first episode.
How we're here.
So what brought us to historical romance? / romance generally, but.
Yeah, I suppose for me, I believe it was, we're going to get dates here. We're going to be specific. The summer of 2019, I entered a thrift store with my friends. And I went to the mass market section because at that point they were like 50 cents. They're up to like $1.50 now, which is exorbitant, but whatever. They were like 50 cents. And I just sat down.
Books are like $4.
I know.
So I envy
I
you.
know. I'm being greedy. It is what it is. I'm supporting local industry. I don't know what that is. So I like sat down. I was an annoying person who just sat down on the ground and just started like taking them out and reading the backs. And I was like, these sound hilarious. I truly was like, this it sounds like something I need to read. And so I bought like 10, I think. I bought a few that like I still like think about. Definitely was it When He Was Wicked by Julia Quinn. I did not know what I was getting. Like, it had a step back. I didn't know what step backs were. It was part of the Bridgerton series. Did not know what Bridgerton were. Like, no idea. So I read that one, and the fact that I got malaria and like sex was absurd to me. I had no clue what historical romance was. So like, you get this man who's like pining for his entire life over this woman who was married to, I think, his cousin, and then his cousin dies, and then Michael, our hero, comes back from India, I think, and then he finds the wife of his deceased cousin, I believe, and he's like, oh my god, she's even hotter than I remember, because he left because he was just so in love. And then he gets malaria, and he teaches her the pleasures of sex, because apparently his cousin just was not doing it. And
obviously not.
I know. I always feel a little bit bad.
If she's a widow, the first husband was never good in the sack.
Like, she loved him. He was a good dude, but like, he wasn't good. So it was just very wild to me. And I was like, okay.
I've never read that book, but I am obsessed with the way that every single thing you just said is like, quintessentially historical romance.
Exactly. So like, my first experience was truly like perfect. You know, like I am not a huge fan of the Bridgerton books. I've only read 3 and I haven't liked 2, but that first one, it's like book 6 or 7 or something. And it was amazing. And I need to read it again because I just do. But that one truly got everything started. And then I read like some contemporary like mass markets, which were like from the 90s. Susan Elizabeth Phillips, some weird ones. I like traveled down that road. And then I believe I had the YA one, Dangerous Alliance or something. That was like, it was in the phase of my life in the pandemic where I was, because this like, we've now progressed to the pandemic. I was like reading a bunch of Pride and Prejudice-esque stuff. Like I was like watching the movie like on repeat, and I just wanted, because that's like an Austen something romance. So like they have Austen in the title, and that was really cute. And then I think before that, my mom, in 2019, like fall, my mom bought me Well Met and Bringing Down the Duke. And I read both of those and was like, oh my god, this is what I want. One was contemporary, had like mild sex, which I thought was the steamiest thing I'd ever read at that point. I was like, oh my god, like so steamy. And then I read Bringing Down the Duke, which truly changed my life because it was just perfect and steamy and very long, but boy, did I not care. It was illustrated cover, so I basically thought that everything with an illustrated cover was safe. Then I, tried to find more, couldn't. And
quickly discovered that is not at all the case.
No, I read Mr. Malcolm's list and it was like, well, where is the sex? Because I was like fresh from YA, like I was a big YA person. There was like no sex except for like Cody Keplinger. She's almost like new adult. And so I did not know where to go. I was like, okay, I have like a few like old school historicals that I read and didn't really think anything of it. And then I was like, I'm reading all these books, and I thought I was the only one. Like, I thought I was the only person on this earth to ever read Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore.
You discovered historical romance.
I did. I'm the only person.
And historical romance hadn't been written until...
No.
When did that book come out? 2020?
I think it was
2021?
I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then the pandemic was 2020. Right. So, like, I had, like, read it, and, like, I didn't really think much of it. Then I, like, went to Christina Lauren, read some of theirs, like, traversed the Wild West. And then I like texted my friends, I think at the end of 2020, was like, hey, should I like start a bookstagram? I like have all of these books that I'm reading. And I had like put up bookshelves. So I was like, I can just take pictures of the bookshelf. Like that's what I need to do. Like I don't need to do like any like crazy props or anything because I am not that motivated. And so they were like, yeah, do it. And I did it. And here we are. Like Bookstagram truly like changed how I read and like what I read. And I think like for better or worse, like, like now you're reading a lot because like it feels like you have to, but I don't have anything else to do besides read. So there's that. And then I just found all these books I wanted to read and add them to the TBR. And here we are.
Add them to the TBR.
Romance your TBR.
Ugh. I didn't like that voice. Didn't care for it.
Yeah, no.
Could have done
it'll come back. I can't control it.
Oh, that's haunting. Anyway. Anyway, I think it's funny because Bringing Down the Duke is also the book that got me into historical romance. And I have a lot of thoughts about, like, illustrated cover trade paperback historicals. And I am very middle of the road on it. Or, like, I don't know. Maybe that's not the right way of phrasing it. But, like, I see both sides. Because... on the one hand, am I now obsessed with clinch covers and stepbacks and old school historicals, and just like countless shelves are now filled with countless old mass market paperbacks? Yes, absolutely. I love being a stepback. Although that's a recent development. Like within the past few months, I have started.
It's bad.
And now I have so many. I do think it's funny. I recently was like, what book did like you associate with me? Like I was asking folks like what's the book they associate with me? And several people were like, oh, anything with a step back. Like I bought this book with a step back because of you. And I was like, I love that very much. Absolutely. Treasuring that deep in my heart. However, ironic because I only started really paying attention to them a few months ago.
Because the Step Back Saturday hashtag is what got me.
Oh, yeah.
Because like I saw people posting. And I was like, what is this? So then I literally went. I had all of my mass markets on the top of my bookshelf. They were, for some reason, like up there where I could not reach. I am short. Could not reach it. So I had to get on a stool, brought them all down, and looked how many stepbacks I had. I had a Joanna Lindsay with Fabio. Oh. It was like, it was like the one where he's in like boots. Like he looks naked, but he's in like tan pants and like Santa boots. And then I had When He Was Wicked, not A Week to Be Wicked. I think I had like a few more, but those are like the two main ones. I think
When He Was Wicked was one of my first ones too. That's fine.
Yeah. It's a pretty one. Like I truly did not know that was something to like value. So I definitely did not start buying them until I like got very deep into that hashtag and like saw everyone, and it was like a FOMO thing, and just how pretty they were. And then,
they're so pretty.
I know.
Like the art is like gorgeous. Anyway, yes, so I very much am an appreciator of that. However, I also recognize that I would not have picked up a historical romance if not for the illustrated cover, because it signaled I was like I had figured out that that's what a contemporary romance. I started historical and contemporary actually at about the same time, because before that I was mixing genres a lot, but largely doing YA fantasy. But then at a certain point, an adult fantasy, and then at a certain point I was like, I'm literally reading these for the romance. Like I don't care about plot, so why don't I try actual romance? but I had figured out that the illustrated cover was like, oh, that's a contemporary romance. So the illustrated cover on historical signaled in my brain, as it is designed to do by a marketing team. Aha. I will like something in this book because I also like books that look like it. I think it was TikTok too. I had already been on TikTok for a few months, I think, at that point, and started to kind of gain a following. But I remember one of my first like specific like book recommendation videos was a video where I had read Bringing Down the Duke and A Rogue of One's Own. And it was me being like, these are the best books I've ever read and everyone should go read them right now. Because I also had like not really heard of them. I'd seen one person post about it and I had written it down and was like, Bringing Down the Duke, that sounds cute. And then I think I was like, I worked at a museum and I had a boring gig on the weekend. I mean, it wasn't boring. It was actually pretty neat. But on the weekends, I was one of two people responsible for the museum on Saturdays, basically. Like, I sat behind a desk for 8 hours. And so I read books, and I needed a book that I could download to my phone. And the library app had Bringing Down the Duke. And I was like, fine. And then I switched to the audiobook, which was a magical experience. Yeah, and I devoured that book.
I think I read the physical copy first, like a few times. Obviously, put like sticky notes in the sex scenes. You can tell in my book like where it like naturally opens to, which is lovely for me, I think. And then I did the audiobook once I got like Libby. Libby was a huge thing too, because I didn't know that there were so many audiobooks that I could just get. Like I used to be old school, go to the library, request like the CD audiobooks. Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I just didn't do audiobooks very often.
Oh, I loved them. But
I started more with Libby.
And then Libby truly had changed the game. Like I read Beach Read. That was one of the first ones. One of the first contemporary. Evvie Drake Starts Over, that one. And then that kind of like started that train on the Libby.
Well, so I remember I started the digital copy of Bringing Down the Duke and I read like one chapter and it's not that it didn't hook me. Well, like I think I was in the middle of multiple books at that point and like I just needed something to read for a few minutes. And so I ended up like not reading it. And then I downloaded the audiobook. And I remember the audiobook very clearly because I had not I thought this was closer to historical fiction. I didn't really know what historical romance was. And I also had not, like, I disassociated it because it was trade paperback illustrated cover. So I thought of it as a separate thing from, like, mass markets, which in my head were called bodice rippers, which is not even a little bit the case, but it's fine. And so I downloaded this audiobook and I thought it was going to be, like, it was cute. It was fun. I was having a good time. I was like, okay, a little romance, a little, like, class difference. She's gotta, go convince this guy to, like, be a good person and vote for women's rights and such. And I very clearly remember, this is the point of the podcast I feel the need to say, if you're related to me, please stop listening. I would like you to not listen to this podcast.
I mean,
don't listen to anything.
I agree, except for I have multiple family members who follow my Bookstagram, which I'm like, I'm going to forget about that.
Mine do too, but I just try to be careful about what I post. At any rate, this podcast is not for you. Anyway, I remember the audiobook because I lived alone in a studio apartment, so I would just play the audiobook out loud and go about my business. And I remember, I wish I could remember what the exact scene was. It might have been like they were in the garden or something, but whatever it was, I was playing my audiobook out loud and the narrator said that it was one of those moments where like the hero is very attracted to her and it said something along the lines of like he felt his cock harden and I dropped what I was doing. I was like, pardon me? What did she just say? I was like shocked. I had to like go rewind because I was like, did I mishear something? What's happening?
Somebody say this man's clock.
I say his what? Is there a rooster somewhere? And I didn't realize. No, I was shaken to my core. I was ultimately delighted. And I really liked the sex scenes in that book too. But like that was a formative experience. I devoured that series.
I had that moment in When He Was Wicked when she had never had anything other than missionary sex before. And so he like taught her how to ride him. And I was, oh, wow, indeed. I was not prepared. I was like, oh my God, this is me. This is who I want.
And now if I read that, I would be like, sure.
But I was so blown away. And so I think with Bringing Down the Duke, I I was hoping maybe. I really don't remember my first reaction. I think maybe when she like gave him a blowjob, because she like went down on him at some point when he was like asking.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've read. I think it was one of those. So he wanted her to be his mistress, and she was like, absolutely not. And then he rescued her from the jail.
Yes.
Also, this is not really spoilers because like it's romance, but like we're gonna be talking about spoilers, I guess. Brought her back home, and then she decided like we're gonna have this one night, which created an issue because he thought like, aha, she has decided to be my mistress, but she had decided they were just gonna spend this one night together. And I think she starts by getting on her knees, and he's like, oh.
Yeah, because he was
what
like,
are we doing here?
He was like, I would never ask you to do this, but then he was like, oh my god,
that I love. That's like a micro trope, I guess. I love when heroines are gonna go down, and the hero is like, you don't have to.
But in his mind, he's like, oh please, please, please keep going.
They're always like, well, you don't have to, and the heroine's always like, I want to.
And then he's like, okay, I will.
If you must. Yeah, and then they end up having penetrative sex. The first scene in that book was more formative for me than the latter one.
Yeah, because it was that when like she like ran away and she was cold.
She ran away from the fireworks.
Yep.
To find him, and he was like, "You ran. Why did you run?" And then
he was like all big and blonde and
a blonde duke named Sebastian, which, as we know, is my weakness.
She has 2 weaknesses.
I have 2 weaknesses, and they are both blonde and named Sebastian, and they're dukes, although one of them becomes a duke later. Anyway, the point is, they end up in the library, and he fingers her from behind.
Does
through the split in her drawers.
I need to reread this. I really do.
Yeah, well, and listen, this was formative because I already wasn't even expecting a sex scene.
Yeah, true.
So already I was like, whoa, what's going on? And it was like it was one of those like he shoves she's up against the wall and he's got his thigh between her legs, and so he had reached behind and was making her grind on his leg at the same time as he was penetrating her with his fingers from behind. Okay, and she was like, what is going on? I also was like, what is going on?
Right
Little
now,
romance
like, what
baby
is going
Caroline.
on?
It was a great scene.
I do not
and then
remember
he's
that.
about to like get his dick out, and she's like, whoa, hang on, we need to have a conversation. And he's like, oh yeah, for sure, like let's draw up a contract. And she's like, pardon?
And I do remember her, obviously she's gonna be like, why would I be your mistress? But in my mind I was like, girl, do it. I was like, okay, do it. Like,
couldn't. That would have ruined her life.
I know, but I was like,
we are doing a whole episode on Evie Dunmore. We should not be talking this.
Well, okay.
Look, okay. Anyway, the point is that I
things to talk about in that series.
Bringing down the Duke very much, and it introduced me to historicals, and so for that reason, I think that there is a place for trade paperback illustrated cover historicals, because I think that they very easily signal to people who typically read contemporary, this is a thing that shares characteristics with the thing that you already like.
And I distinctly like, especially in contemporary, I like it a lot more like in YA, where they used to have like the real people on them, and they would be very like cringy looking, like Photoshop jobs and very odd. I definitely don't mind, cartoon covers. I think they're pretty. My whole Instagram feed is colorful, and that's mainly
they are pretty,
and it's normally due to those spines. Like I have multiple historical romances that are mass market that have colorful spines, but I do think I like the look of them. It's more so in historical because I have more of a stake in that I much prefer. But again, I do try to be like, okay, Hannah, you did start reading cartoon covers, so you can't. Because I tried to find every cartoon cover. Like Joanna Lowell had a cartoon cover one.
Yeah, I did her first one. Yep. I went to the Martha Waters series.
Yep, Martha Waters
ones
Minerva
that I read.
Spencer.
I am still in love with the first book in that series. That
book was very good.
To Hoax.
Apparently, a controversial opinion.
I know a lot of people, because everyone told me like, oh, the second one is better, To Love and To Loathe, and I liked To Love and To Loathe just fine. But so far, none of the books in that series have lived up to Heaven to Hoax for me. That is a great book. Anyway, so I did illustrated cover. Eventually, I listened to a couple of Tessa Dare books, and I was like, "What? These are like historical rom-coms."
Oh, so you started? I see. Okay, so
I've still only read a couple of Tessa Dares, but I started with those, and then I think actually after that was Erica Ridley, because Dana forever reached out and was like, hey, we saw you liked Amanda Collins. Would you like some other historical romances? And sent me The Duke Heist.
Erica,
and Loving a Wallflower.
Erica was the first author to ever send me anything. Like, she reached out. I don't know how she found me. I think I only had like 1,000 followers or something. And she just was like, hey, do you want this book? And I was like, yeah. And it's a beautiful cover. That cover is gorgeous.
I love that cover.
What is it called?
The Duke Heist.
Oh my god, yes, The Duke Heist. I love that book too. I was like crying. Beautiful. I love that book so much. And so she sent it to me, and I was like, oh my god, I'm official. And so, I felt real big for my britches right there. And then I think like I started NetGalley. I think my first one was like a Lorraine Heath.
Interesting. I have been doing like YA fantasy and stuff on NetGalley.
I was in like an Avon Facebook group, and they gave like the widget to the Facebook group, and so I just downloaded, because like I was very against ebooks when I first started. Like I didn't read ARCs because I didn't want to deal with ebooks, and I have since gotten over that because I am lazy, and highlighting on ebooks is way easier than taking notes. And I now read a lot of ARCs, so like NetGalley is the way to go. I mean, sometimes I get physical copies, but with that NetGalley ratio, I feel very on top of my shit, because like I know that if I don't read something, it will negatively impact me, so I read them. But like physical stuff, I have such a hard time making time.
I do have a hard time with physical ones. I also do, however, have a whole bunch of NetGalley ARCs that have already been published, and I sure do need to go read them and
at least reviews. In that sense, you can get the audiobooks, and then like
that's true.
Most of the
time,
do
that.
Yep.
I can. Very true. Anyway, so then I went from that to mass markets, largely because of Erica Ridley. And then things kind of spiraled from there. My historical because I went from reading like a little bit of romance in with everything else, and I started historical and contemporary at about the same time. And my romance reading, and it's historical specifically, looks like an exponential curve. Where it started slow, and then all of a sudden, that's the only thing I'm reading. I have my like reading stats in a spreadsheet for the year, and I think right now it's 60 or 70% historical romance, and then like 20% contemporary. Like, it's all romance. That's it. That's my whole life now.
Yeah,
and I have no regrets.
I will occasionally throw in a YA thriller, because for some reason that's like my comfort. I mean, historical is my comfort, but like YA thrillers, just I don't know why, but I love them so much. So like I'll go there, or like the Jack the Ripper series is like historical YA, and it's also kind of like she's like a forensic scientist, so it's kind of like Bones too. There's a lot of things happening in that series. Perfect for fall. But like, yeah, I mean, I have a picture on my Instagram that is of The Road by Cormac McCarthy. What was I doing posting The Road by Cormac McCarthy? I read it for an English class in college. Like, and it was a good book. I sobbed, but like, why did I post that? I have so many questions about myself. Like, it's very fun.
You were a different person when you read The Road.
Oh, I was. And I truly, because I remember being in that class, and the professor made everyone go around and say what they were reading. And I think I had read like a YA romance, and then I read The Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons by Dan Brown. And I was like, okay, people probably won't know the romance, so I'll say Dan Brown. And I did not know it was controversial to like Dan Brown. I did not know that he was an embarrassing author to read. Apparently he is. And I know, the professor had an article literally printed for everyone in the class on why Dan Brown was a mediocre writer.
No.
So I was like, okay. So that ever since then, I have just always been like, yep, romance. I have embraced it. So like, I also get where people can be like embarrassed. Like I can't judge people for being embarrassed.
No, I started embarrassed. Yeah, and now I've progressed to the point where it's all that I talk about on the internet and also in real life. And I have literal T-shirts with like shirtless, cartoon shirtless men with women with bodices falling off riding horses on that. Like I just wear romance things and talk about it constantly. I don't care anymore. In fact, I will weed you out if you're a new person that I'm talking to and I mention that I like romance. Your response is going to determine whether this conversation is going to continue, because I simply don't have time anymore.
Yeah.
If you're like, oh, haha, those like really terrible like women's porn, but I'm like, get out of my face.
Yeah, I
don't talk to someone who cares, because it's not me.
Too many people like that. Like I think
usually they won't to your face, but occasionally I've had some weird run-ins.
That was a hair flip. You did not see it. It was a hair flip.
It didn't intend. It was. unintentional.
The only snark I really get is from one of the employees at the thrift store I go to. We have like 3 thrift stores in town. This is like the local one. And I will just buy bags of books.
Sure.
Like I have no shame at this point in my life. Like I will buy bags, but I do not like going to him because he will make me feel uncomfortable about it. And I feel that's bad.
Yeah.
Because like no one should make it. And like, not to defend it, like he's like talked more as I've been going in more and stuff, but he still is like, oh, those books. Or like, and I'm just like, yeah, those
bad
books.
practice for any customer service worker.
And like I don't like going to, like, even at the grocery store, I don't like going to men. Like whatever, it is what it is. Because I just get stressed. But yeah, he stresses me out. So I always wait. Like I'll like loiter until like they switch, or I'll just like, you know, do a hair flip and go and just be.
I'm done. I will go because I go to Half Price Books, and I used to work at Half
I wish I
Price
was closer.
Books. So either if I go to the Half Price that I used to work at, I always time it so that like my friend who still works there, like I'll go see that, and they know. They know if I'm like, hey, I'm coming, I'm gonna clear out your romance section, and they like, do they bully me for it? Yes. However, I know them, so it's fine. But at the other one I go to, they don't know me. But the last time I was there, I was putting my like stacks on stacks of romance novels on the counter, and I made a joke. I was like talking to the woman at the on the cash register because she seemed nice, and I was like, I used to work at a Half Price Books, and I had been reading romance but not mass market really, so I didn't take advantage of like all the books that I could have bought, and it hurts my soul, but it's fine.
I feel pain for you every day knowing that.
It's fine. But I was saying like these old or older women would come in and just buy like cartfuls of mass market romances. Right. And they would always, every single time, they would put all their books up there and I would be scanning them, and they would always be like, that'll keep me busy for a couple of weeks. And I would laugh politely.
Like,
and then, and then I was like putting these books on the counter, and this woman was checking me out. And I was like, I used to work at a Half Price, and these old women would come in with these cartfuls of books, and they would, and now, you know, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Like, now I am those old women. And I have to fight the urge every time I go unload my carts to be like, that'll keep me busy for a couple of weeks. Because quite literally, I could go through them that quickly. Like, they were right.
They were so right. And the pandemic has taken away any social skills I had prior to the pandemic.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how to interact with human beings.
Yes. So any small talk has gone out the window. So like I just stand there and I'm like, I don't really want to be talking to you. So I'm not going to. And so like I like, if the person's nice and they like we'll have a conversation. But a lot of times I just unload like my bags, because like I always buy I always buy the reusable bags, but I always just buy more. Because I don't want to limit myself. I'm not going to limit myself. So I just like buy the bag. They're like 99 cents. And so I just go in and just get a bag whenever I need one.
You just have like piles?
I do, actually. Bags? I use a lot of them. I have a lot of books that I'm like selling. So like I keep a lot of the books in there. We have to transport them and stuff. And like when I was moving out of New York, they were very easy to like put things in to transfer to the car. But yes, I now have a collection of Half Price Books bags because I buy them every time, and I just unload. Like I give no explanation. I'm just like,
you said, I'm buying what I'm buying, and you're not getting paid to talk to me about it.
And they're like, did you find everything? I was like, yeah, I did.
Oh, but can you? Enough. I'm actually missing things.
No, I'm like,
I know I have 20 books stacked on the counter right now, but no, I did not find everything I was looking for. I actually would really have appreciated if you guys had in stock a first edition copy of Tender is the Storm. I
got one of those on Pango Books. I have it in my room right now. It has like 3 like hole punches, but not on his butt. And so I do have a copy where you can see Fabio's. Is it Fabio or who? No, it's not Fabio. I think it's some random guy, but his ass is not censored, so we don't censor asses.
I have not found any on Pango. I have bought a couple of books on eBay recently, and I've been checking. But the problem with eBay is, of course, that they're charging like absurd amounts of money, and I'm like, I simply can't afford to spend that much money on one.
shipping.
And shipping. You know? I can't do it. So I'm just gonna wait.
You can get me to pay for a book, but you add $5 shipping? Absolutely not. I can't do it. So
it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to keep my eye out, and someday in some used bookstore, I'm going to stumble across maybe
and it's going to be
some copy of
glorious.
Tender is the Storm. It's going to be great. I found a lot of really fun books in
Mm-hmm.
like half price and used bookstores.
Mm-hmm.
Most, in fact, of my historical romances are all used. So
well, and that's the best part is because now like all I buy are used mass market books basically, or like a used copy of like a contemporary that I liked, or like a different book that I wanted to own. But I generally don't buy new like books anymore, because if I haven't read them already, like I'm just not taking those risks anymore. Like at the beginning, I just bought so many like contemporary romance books with cartoon covers, and I was like, why am I doing this? Like if I haven't read them yet, like how do I know I'll like them? Like the
I
library
was buying a
exists.
lot of books.
Yes. And so I was getting to a point where I was like, I can't keep doing that. And now even like I'll normally like have an arc, so like I know, if I want to buy it, and like I'll get it or whatever, or I'll get sent it. So like I just save all of my money now for mass market used books, and it's fun.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've talked for 47 minutes.
47. It was just 47. So look at that.
Magical. It's a sign.
It is a sign.
I don't even remember what we talked about in this episode. Intro.
Well, we
Who's
talked about who
we just
are.
talked incessantly, which is always what happens.
Who, what, when, where, and why.
It doesn't bode well for us limiting ourselves to 45-minute episodes, that our intro episode took this long.
This is true. We have gone on tangents, the Heartbreaker tangent,
obviously the Evie Dunmore
on the Duke tangent.
Yep. Tangent.
Mm-hmm. Just so many, but we are who we are.
Thank you to the 4 people who listened this long.
Yes, thank you.
If you made it this far into this episode, I feel like you should win a prize.
Mm-hmm. We have no prizes, but
I could give you a prize.
Oh,
I can find a prize somewhere. Do you know how many like extra copies of books I'm selling? I will happily send you one.
I have
Let me know which one you want.
I have so many that I have now duplicates of, just because I buy so many, and it's a problem.
I have an extra copy of Heartbreaker, actually.
I too. I have 2 copies and an arc. For some reason, the publisher sent me 2 copies and the arc. So here we are.
I ordered a signed copy, and then I forgot that I had ordered a signed copy. And so while I was taking a trip in New York, and I passed a bookstore, and I saw it was like right before the book came out. But you know how Barnes and Noble will put books out ahead of.
Yep. Oh, I love that.
And I saw Heartbreaker, and keep in mind at this point I had only read 9 Rules to Break. I was planning on reading all of her backlist, which I did. I was planning on reading the whole thing before I got to Heartbreaker, but I saw it pre-August 23rd or whatever it was, and was like, oh, let me pick up this copy real quick. And then a copy arrived in the mail, and I was like, oh, that's because I pre-ordered a signed copy, and now I have this extra one. So I'm going to use it in a giveaway for my birthday this month. Stay tuned.
Ooh. Yeah, I have started tracking what books I'm sent, what format they're sent in, where I have them, if it's an audiobook, like all that. Because
I have a giant Notion table.
Yep, because now I need to like make sure I'm posting like what I need to be, and like blog tours and stuff. So like I semi have my life figured out, but I truly don't. But yeah, giveaways are just so tempting. I just want to give people books. That's my entire life goal.
Just want to give you some books.
Mm-hmm. We really do.
Okay.
Maybe we should do a pot like at some point. Like
all of our illustrious plans.
Yes.
For this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
This has been
a time.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of Romance Your TBR. Next week, I don't know how long it'll be between now and when the next episode goes live.
Who knows?
But tune in on whatever the following, what did we say, Friday is?
Yes, because then TBR Tuesdays are
every other Tuesday
coming.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So tune in on Friday for our what is surely going to be a chaotic episode about Heartbreaker by Sarah MacLean, which is probably, if I'm being honest, going to be 45 minutes of us talking about the
I'm going to talk for 20 minutes about the face sitting. So
what's the face sitting? Listen.
I'm starting a list. I have a list
She gave us that light tease of a spanking thing, and I was like, all right, so follow up. Where's the novella?
I think there was like a moment where he teased her ass too.
I don't remember that. I will be revisiting.
I pulls the glasses.
Looks like it's time for a reread less than a week after I read it for the first time.
I know. I've already read it 2 times. Here we are.
I love that for you. Okay, for real, this is the end of the episode.
Remember,
how do you finish a podcast episode?
I don't know. Remember, YouTubers say, like, subscribe. I don't know how to like, so just subscribe. Our channels.
I assume we'll have some kind of Instagram by the time this goes live.
Yes, hopefully. We have one, just nothing's posted on it.
Sure, Romancer TBR.
Yep, at Romancer TBR. Maybe we'll make a Twitter and or a TikTok. I don't quite know.
We'll find out. And then us on the various socials.
Yes.
At Salty Caroline Reads.
And they will be linked. Book reviews somewhere. We did it. The end. You
know what the problem is? When I finish listening to podcasts, as soon as they go into their end of episode speech, I stop listening, so I don't know how to finish. I don't know how to finish title of my sex tape.